Sumer and Akkad. Around 4000 to 3500 BC, a group of people entered Mesopotamia from the east, who founded the civilization of Sumer. These people called themselves blackheads, or black faces. The Sumerians came to Mesopotamia by boats, first used in the eastern Sahara and on the Red Sea. These boats are analogous to the Sumerian craft, and some of the boats that were also being used in Africa around this time. The Sumerians, Dravidians, and African speakers originated in the Fertile African Crescent, which were the highland regions of Middle Africa. These people who lived in the Fertile African Crescent belonged to the Ma clan. The Ma clan, or Ma Confederation, was the name of the major Paleo-African clan during the last great wet period in Saharan history, 5000 to 3000 BC. The Ma Confederation includes the Egyptians, Elamites, Dravidians, Manding, and Sumerians. In this video, we call members of this civilization Proto-Sahara. To denote their ethnic origin, they added the term Ma to their ethnonyms. The Manding called themselves Maende, the children of Ma, and the Sumerians called themselves Magari, exalted God's children. I discussed this great African civilization in my book Before Egypt, the Ma Confederation, Africa's first civilization. The Sumerians were in control of Mesopotamia for many years. Then around 2334 BC, a group of Puntite, or Semitic speakers called Akkadians, under Namrun Sin, or Sargon of Akkad, took over Mesopotamia. The most famous king of Sumer was Gilgamesh. The first king to unify much of Sumer, though, was Meslium, who took the title of King of Kish around 2500 BC. The second most famous leader of Sumer was Gudea. Gudea is best known for his trade expeditions and unification of Sumer. He is also said to have obtained craftsmen from Susa and Elam for the decoration of his temples for his people. By 2380 BC, the Semitic-speaking people took over control of Sumer. The Semitic speakers were led by Sargon the Great. It was Sargon who unified Sumer again. Sargon, who had once been the cupbearer of King of Zabada, a king of Kish, he was also a great military leader and builder of the unified state of Sumer Akkad. The capital of Sargon's empire was Agad. This is in the Bible we read Akkad. By 2000 BC, the Akkadians had been subjected to the Shubartu, a people of Indo-European names. Also at this time, Amorites entered Mesopotamia. Part of this invasion was the Canaanites, who also spoke a Semitic language. The Canaanites established the rule of Hammurabi in 1800 to 1700 BC. The fact that the Sumerians and Akkadians were Africans or blacks is best indicated by the artwork from Ur, Tel Asmar, and Eridu. Indo-European rulers of Lagash and Larsa tried to imitate Sumerian styles, but many of them were Gudians and therefore not of Kushite origin. It is interesting to note that the Mesopotamian king list does not recognize any of the Ensees or leaders of Lagash. The Gudians ruled Lagash until Utu-Higal, king of Iraq, conquered Trigan, the last Gudian king. The Canaanites invaded Mesopotamia from Arabia. They occupied Palestine and Phoenicia. In the ancient literature, the Canaanites were called Martu, or Amorites. The most famous Canaanite ruler of Mesopotamia was Hammurabi. Hammurabi was a great black king. He is famous for collecting the laws of Babylon and creating a code to give justice to all Babylonians. Another group of Canaanites, the Kassites, became the rulers of Mesopotamia. The Kassites ruled for 400 years, far longer than any other Babylonian dynasty. They are very good rulers of Babylonia. Although the Kassites are considered Canaanites, the Kassites did not speak a Semitic language. The Kassites, they spoke a Dravidian language, much the same as Tamil. The Kassites maintained good relations with the Egyptians. This fact is supported by the Amarna cuneiform inscriptions found at the capital of Pharaoh Akhenaten. There is unity between the Akkadian and Ethiopian languages. The Akkadians and Sumerians claim they came from the Egypto-Nubia and Put, Ethiopia, and from there they went to West Asia. S.N. Kramer, in his book The Sumerians, claimed the Makan was Egypt, Me'alukka was Nubia Punt, and the Indus Valley was Dilmun. Today, Dilmun is believed to be found near Arabia, but the archaeological evidence suggests that the Indus Valley, which was settled by Dravidian speakers, was the source of the lapis lazuli, which made Dilmun famous. Dilmun was an important source of lapis lazuli. In the Indus Valley civilization, was Dilmun as hypothesized by Kramer, it would explain the control of the Arappans or Delmanites of this important metal. The Indus Valley people spoke the Tamil language. The Harappans controlled the Lazurite region of Pakistan and the routes to the tin and copper fields of Central Asia. The major city of the Arappans, Delmanites, is the lapis lazuli region, was Shortugad. Franciford believes that many lapis lazuli works were transported to Iran and Mesopotamia from Shortugad in Afghanistan. The black and red ware at Shortugad is typically Harappan. Most scholars, such as Joanne Oates in Babylon, suggest that Magan, Egypto-Nubia, and Meluha, Punt, were southeastern Arabia and the Makian coast, to as far as the Indus Valley. But according to Samuel Noah Kramer, the leading expert on the Sumerians and Akkadians, from the time of Sargon the Great, 2334 BC, down to the first millennium BC, Magan and Meluha was Egypto-Nubia and Punt, Ethiopia, respectively. According to these records, ships from Meluha and Magan brought trade goods to Mesopotamia. According to W.J. Perry in The Growth of Civilization, the myths, legends, and traditions of the Sumerians pointed to Nubia as their ancient home. Sir Henry Rawlinson, who deciphered the cuneiform writing, traced the Sumerians and Akkadians back to Nubia and Punt. Sir Rawlinson called the ancient Mesopotamians Cushites. It was the French Orientalist Julius Oppat who named them Sumerians in an attempt to keep them separate from the Cushites, a black race of Africa. But Rawlinson, in the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society, was correct in calling the Sumerians Cushites. The title King of Kish was highly praised by the subsequent kings of Sumer. This title allowed Sumerian kings to claim of suzerainty over the whole country. The people of Sumer over time learned all their knowledge from the Anu, a mysterious people who founded the Ubaid culture in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians expanded the dikes to hold back the floods of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, and dug canals and reservoirs to store water and carry it to the plains. This led to grand harvests yielding 200 to 300 grains per plant, in an area today where the Turks make a pitiful existence. Sumerians built cities of unbaked bricks. Many of these cities, such as Ur, Eridu, and Uruk, Nippur, Akkad, have been excavated. The excavations of Erich and Agade support the biblical accounts and skeleton remains of the ancient inhabitants of Chaldea, show that they were blacks. These Southwest Asians were short, with thin lips and large noses. The Sumerians said they came by sea to Sumer-Akkad. Enki, who founded Eridu, situated on the headwaters of the Persian Gulf, is said to have come by sea. The Sumerians spoke two different languages. One was Semitic. It was used by the Semitic founders of Akkad, and the other language was Sumerian. Like the Egyptians said, they had come to Mesopotamia from Magan, or Egypto-Nubia, and Meluha, or Punt, Northeast Africa. These areas are mentioned as early as Sargon the Great and Gudea. Both countries are frequently mentioned in Sumerian and Akkadian records. Sargon the Great, 2330, wrote that the boats of Magan, and I quote, and Luha and Delmun were anchored in his capital Baghdad. Gudea wrote that he obtained diorite for his statues from Magan and wood for the temples from both Magan and Meluha, unquote. The Meluhites were called the men of the Black Land, or the Black Meluhites. The Meluhites are said to have traded in carnelian, lapis lazuli, metals, stones, and minerals. Delmun, which is believed to be the ancient Indus Valley civilization, was considered to be the paradise by the Sumerians. According to Sumerian tradition, Enki had come from Delmun. It's interesting to note that Sumerian is closely related to the Dravidian languages, which were spoken in the Indus Valley in ancient times, as pointed out earlier. In fact, I deciphered the Indus Valley writing many years ago, and I've been able to go into many of their documents and records. And the language shows us that the people who lived in the Indus Valley were very interested in doing right, living a good life, and being able to serve God. The Sumerian cities were led by an Ensi, who was a city governor. Matters concerning the cities of Sumer were decided only by free citizens who served in the assembly, consisting of an upper house of elders and a lower house of men. The king had a regular army with chariots and armored infantry. The Sumerians cherished goodness, truth, law, and order, and justice. As a result, the king had to be a man who could establish law and order and protect the poor from the rich. The Mesopotamian cities existed only for trade and as centers for worship. As a result, the people were heavily taxed so as to provide income for the temples. Land could be individually owned in Sumer and Akkad, but most city land was owned by the temples. This land could not be bought or sold. The Sumerians invented their own calendar. It was divided into 2 seasons, Emish and summer, and Inten winter. The months were lunar. They began with the evening of the new moon and lasted for 29 to 30 days in length. The day began with sunset and was 12 double hours in length, following the Egyptian model. The Babylonians had a complex mathematical system. In addition to simple arithmetic, these people had algebra. Moreover, they employed Pythagorean's theorem more than 1,000 years before the Greek Pythagoras learned it from the Egyptians. It seems, though, that algebra and geometry were just a few of the mathematical procedures used by the people of Mesopotamia. The Sumerians were stargazers. Sumerians called all celestial bodies, planets, stars, or constellations mul, i.e. that which shines in the heights. Some mul were called lubad because they wandered through the heavens. The Sumerians were also familiar with supernovas. The Sumerians are believed to have invented their own writing system. This writing system is called cuneiform, which comes from the Latin word cunis, which means wedges. The Sumerians wrote their characters on clay with a pen or stylus. Thousands of their tablets have been found at Nippur and Nineveh. The Sumerians, or Babylonians, as the Semitic Akkadian Empire was called, had many schools where students learned grammar, writing, medicine, and mathematics. The Sumerian schools were called Iduba. Teachers were called Umiyas, or professors. The Sumerians had many gods, plus a main god called An, the heaven god or hidden god. By 2500 BC, with the rise of the Akkadians, or Babylonians, the supreme god was called Enlil, the air god. Other Sumerian gods included Yanana, or the Akkadian goddess Ishtar, and her husband, the shepherd god Dumuzi, the biblical Tammuz. The queen of the netherworld, or hell, was called Erishkigal. The Sumerians had their own names of the gods. The major gods were Sin, Nana, the moon god, Ishtar, Venus, and Nabu, or Marduk, the god of wisdom and knowledge. Nergal was the god of war. Nabu, also the god of the scribes, were popularized by them in Babylonia. Nabu was the son of Marduk. Most of the contemporary books on Sumer and ancient Mesopotamia in general provide little information on the goddesses of Sumer. As a result, you would feel that mother goddess worship was insignificant in Sumer. Although this is the case for contemporary literature, there is considerable discussion of the Sumer goddesses by Samuel N. Kramer in his book, The Sumerians. The most important god in the history of Sumer was Namu. Namu was the creator of the heavens and the sea. She was also recognized as the mother of Enki. In Sumerian literature, she was recognized as the primeval sea and the mother who gave birth to all the gods. This is an important revelation because it makes it clear that in the beginning, the Sumerians held the mother goddess as the leading god in their pantheon of gods. Second, important mother goddesses in the history of Sumer was Ninhursag. Ninhursag was also called Ninmah, the exalted lady, and Nintu, the lady who makes life. In some Sumerian documents, Nintu was called Ki, Mother Earth. Nintu was usually listed as the fourth god in the Sumerian pantheon of gods, after An, Enlil, and Enki. But Kramer noted that, and I quote, "In an earlier day, this goddess was probably of even higher rank, and her name often preceded that of Enki, when the four gods were listed together for one reason or another." The oldest temple in Sumer was dedicated to Nintu. At Al-Ubad, the oldest pottery in Mesopotamia was found. It was also here that the oldest Sumerian temple in Namzu was dedicated to Nintu. The most ancient Sumerian document is concerned with Adab, a major ancient Sumerian center where Ubaid pottery has been found. It was devoted to the building of the temple of Inanmuzu. The temple was dedicated to the chief deity of the city that was called the goddess Nintu. The document relating to events taking place early in the 3rd millennium BC notes that when the temple was dedicated, the viziers Osukelmaz of Elam, Maharshi, Gutium, Subir, Martu, Sutium, Iana, Irech, came to bring sacrifices to participate in the celebrations at the Adab temple. In relation to this inscription, Kramer noted that, and I quote, "The rather extraordinary dedicatory inscription then closed with the exhortation that the goddess Nintu could grant long life to the Ncs, kings or rulers of these 7 lands, if they continued to bring offerings and sacrifices to the Inanzu of Adad," unquote. This document also tells us about the dedication of the Inanzu temple. It's important because it indicates that all of the early Sumerian city-states recognized Nintu as a mother goddess, as the premier god of Sumer. This may explain why the early Sumerian rulers described themselves as nourished constantly by Nin-Hursag with milk. The Sumerians made it clear that the goddess is not the gods first created life. For example, Nintu, according to Kramer, was considered to be the mother of all living things, and aid to Namu in the creation of mankind. In the Sumerian story for the creation of mankind, Enki asked his mother to create mankind with the assistance of Nintu. Kramer recorded the story as follows, and I quote, "O my mother, Namu, the creature whose name you uttered, it exists. Bind upon it the image of the gods. Mix the heart of the clay that is over the abyss. The god and princely fashioners will thicken the clay. Do you bring the limbs into existence. Ninmah will work above you, the goddess of birth, will stand by you at your fashioning, O my mother. Decree it, the newborn's fate. Ninmah will bind upon it the mold of the god, it is man." Unquote. This passage from Sumerian creation story makes it clear that mankind was created by the word, or decree of Namu, and a female goddess, Nintu, created that man in the image of the gods. The Sumerian literature makes it clear that the male gods were unsuccessful in the creation of life. This is evidenced by a story about the creation of a life form by Enki. In this story, Enki attempts to create a life form which comes into being sick and lifeless. As a result of Enki's mistake, he is cursed by Nintu and sent to Hades to die. According to the story, the gods bind Nintu, Nin-Hursag, and beg her to relieve Enki of her curse. The goddess forgives Enki, and she creates goddess to heal Enki, who has been cast into the underworld. This goddess was called Ninti, the Lady of the Rib, or the Lady who makes life. This story makes it clear that the male gods of Sumer had almost no role in the creation of mankind. Yes, although the Bible teaches us that the first man was Adam, we see that in the Sumerian literature, the creators of mankind were women or females. The fact that Namu was credited with 1, the creation of the heavens and the sea, 2, the protector and legitimizer of the kings of Sumer, and 3, the God who decreed that man exist, and Nintu made man in the image of God, makes it clear that the goddess was the primeval god of the Sumerians. Crane believes that the story in the Bible about the creation of women from the rib may relate to the story of Ninti. This results from the fact that T is a Sumerian word for rib. As a result, the fact that Ninti was known as the Lady of the Rib and the Lady who makes life may explain why the Bible claims that Eve in the biblical paradise story was created from the rib. Crane believes that since Ninti represented both the making of life and the rib, the writers of the Bible made a pun by claiming that Eve was created from the rib, when the Sumerian creation story makes it clear that Ninti was created by Nintu to heal Enki. As you can see, the Sumerian civilization was a great civilization. It's a civilization that contributed much to mankind. The Sumerians did not just appear in Africa. The Sumerians did not just appear in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians did not come from outer space. The Sumerians came from the Sahara in Africa. They migrated to Mesopotamia and built one of the greatest civilizations in the history of mankind, ancient Sumer and Akkad.